Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. So you often hear it said, trust your instincts. Listen to your inner voice. Believe your gut feeling and go with it. That's a piece of advice that you hear very, very often. And it has a certain appeal to it. Because if you trust your instinct, you don't have to think any further. You just go with what your inner voice is telling you. You don't have to analyze, you don't have to question all the calculations out the window. You just go with whatever feels right in that inner deep voice. The problem with it is that it doesn't always work out so well. And from experience, we know that sometimes our inner voice tells us something that in retrospect probably wasn't the right thing. On other times, it gets it right, but not always. And sometimes our inner voice is quite conflicted as well. Sometimes we hear several inner voices pulling us in different directions, and we're not sure which one is the real inner voice, and which one is just an outer inner voice, or a not real inner voice, or something that's coming from somewhere else. And so, as neat and as convenient as that piece of advice is, it doesn't always stack up. Like, for example, a person could, let's say, be in a relationship, and there's an inner voice telling them to get out of that relationship. So, according to the philosophy of listen to the inner voice, listen to your instinct, listen to that gut feeling, so you got to get out, because that inner voice is telling you to get out. But there are so many possible sources for that voice. Who's to say that the source of that voice is a good one? Like, that voice could be coming from fear. There are many people who have fear in relationships, fear in getting serious about a relationship. And so as soon as a relationship gets serious, there's a voice that tells them to get out of it. Where's that voice coming from? From their past bad experiences, or from their own insecurities, things that they need to get over, not that they need to listen to. And if they would listen to that inner voice that tells them to get out every time it comes, then they'll be getting out every time a relationship starts to go well, and that's bad news. On the other hand, that inner voice might be a good one. Sometimes we get into a relationship and it's wrong, but we don't notice that, we don't realize that, we're not conscious of it, and then there's some deeper sense that we have that something's wrong. Had we listened to that voice in the beginning, we wouldn't have entered into the relationship, and perhaps we should listen to it now. And even though we can't put our finger on why, we need to get out. There's a good reason why. But we don't know. When you hear it in a voice, you don't know, is it good advice or not? Is it coming from an insecurity I have, or is it coming from some deeper sense, some deeper instinct? It's very difficult to know. And the reason why it's difficult to know is because an inner voice could come from several different places within our personality. And until we learn to identify where our inner voices are coming from, we're not going to be able to know whether to listen to them or ignore them, whether they're giving us a good, deep insight into something that we should heed, or they're actually trying to destroy something good that we have. And so to identify that inner voice, we have to start to identify what are the voices speaking inside us, where are they coming from, and how to tell which is which. And on this, Rabbi Zalman, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, presents a view of the human condition that shows the various possible sources that our deepest inner voices could be coming from, and ways to tell which is which. This, I think, in fact, is perhaps one of the central themes of the book of Tanya. And it's one that, it's not unique, it's not an idea that he invented, but it's one that Rabbi Zalman in Tanya developed to an extent that no one else had done before, and made it into the centerpiece of his work. And it starts from the very beginning of Tanya, chapter 1, where Rabbi Zalman makes a very dramatic statement. In discussing the soul that energizes us, our deeper personality, our deeper self, Rabbi Zalman says that we need to know something important about the soul, and that is that we each have two. we have two souls. Not one, but two. And Rabbi Shneur Zalman goes on to explain the identity of the two souls that each one of us have. And by getting to know those souls, we'll get to know a very important part of our own personality. What are the two souls? So Rabbi Shneur Zalman names them as the Nefesh HaBahamis and the Nefesh Elokis, which means we have an animalistic soul and we have a divine soul. Elsewhere he calls them the instinctive soul. The animalistic soul is sometimes called the instinctive soul, the natural soul, along with this divine soul that is separate to it. These two souls both inhabit the one body. They're both you. And when you hear a voice coming from within you, it's coming from your soul. The question is which? Which soul is talking? Because these two souls are very different in their identity, in fact, counter opposites. The nature of the animalistic or instinctive soul is that, like its name implies, it follows instinct. Its main thing is to worry about self. It is our drive to survive, to live, to be comfortable, to promote ourselves, to continue our own existence. It is a very important, necessary part of life. We are hungry because we have an animalistic, instinctive soul that wants to be alive and wants to be fed. And so that's a very good thing. It's important to be fed, to eat, to survive. That is the function of the animal soul, is to look after self, that I should exist, I should continue. But the animal soul is only about self. It's only interested in my own needs being met. That's its be-all and end-all. It is our egotistical, self-centered side that I feel my hunger and I will feed that hunger no matter what. It has no qualms, it has no moral scruples, it has no issues, it just wants to look after itself. I will seek my own happiness, my own comfort, my own pleasure, my own survival at the expense of anything. This is what my animal soul is about. And the only way the animal soul could be sometimes nice, perhaps, or giving, or cooperate with another person, is when that feels right and comfortable to it. If I feel that you can add to my survival, so then we can be friends. If I feel that having a relationship with you will add to my ego, will make me feel good about myself, will feed my needs, or you've got good connections that can get me where I want to go, we can be friends. But that friendship is completely self-centered. It is because you give me something, I'm willing to be friends with you. This is my animal soul. This is how it relates to others. And from the perspective of our animal soul, we are in this world to eat, drink, and be merry, to look after ourselves, have a pleasurable, fun, comfortable time until we leave this world. This is our animal soul, and this each one of us have. But we have another soul, and that is our divine soul. The divine soul, as the name implies, is the part of us that is godly, the peace of God that is within us. This soul, its entire interest is to connect to God by doing good, by doing that which is true, that which is righteous, that which is moral, that which is upright. It has a total spiritual yearning to be connected with the divine, to be connected with true reality. The divine soul has no interest in bodily needs, in physical, material pleasures. It purely wants truth, goodness, to be connected and one with God. And this is our drive to be good, to do the right thing because it's right, to be kind, to be generous, to be giving, not for selfish gain, but because it's the right thing to do. The divine soul, because it's a piece of God, looks at another as also a piece of God. The way our divine soul looks at other people is that I have a divine spark, so do you. And God is one, so therefore we are one. So my divine soul is not in competition with yours. On the contrary, we're really one, and we can unite. From the perspective of my divine soul, I can love you like I love myself because we are really one. We're all a part of one God. And so there's no competition in the eyes of the divine soul. There's no threat from others. We're all one thing. We're all one happy, divine reality. And so these two souls, polar opposite, are both inhabiting the one body, the one you. They're both you. It is you that is selfish, and it is you that is selfless. It's you that is materialistic, and it is you that is idealistic. It's both you. When you're in a very hedonistic, self-absorbed type of mood, that's your animal soul in control. When you're in a very altruistic, spiritual, giving mood, that's your divine soul in control. Only one of those souls can be in control at any one time. Only one of them can be calling the shots, because you've only got one body. You've only got one being that is going to be defined by one of those souls at any one time, and the other one is pushed aside at that time. But it's going to fight its way back, because it's you, it's a part of you, and it's not going to let you get away with only giving your attention to the other side. It will try to assert itself back. Anytime we fall into the animalistic soul's clutches and we become totally selfish, we can get away with it for a while, we might enjoy that for a while. But there'll be some voice inside us, an inner voice, saying this is not what life is all about. There must be more to life than just self-indulgence, just feeding myself. What's my purpose? What am I here to do? And that's the voice of the divine soul trying to drag you out of your animal state. But then also, when you get too spiritual, when you get too good, when you become a bit too selfless and too giving, your animal soul digs in its heels and says, what about me? You got to feed yourself as well. And you get urges to give away your morality, your goodness, your higher self, and just fall back down into the physical, into the material. Because there's an inner voice of the animal soul trying to pull you back to it. These two souls are our reality. And Tanya is really a book about these two souls, about understanding these two souls, becoming familiar with them and getting used to them, because neither of them are going anywhere. We're going to have both of them for our entire life, and it's about managing them to go in the path of the divine soul and to try and train the animal soul to not be so selfish, to allow the divine soul to call the shots. This is the struggle of the two souls, and this is our life mission, to align our animal soul to be able to listen to our divine soul. There are many ramifications of that idea. It's a big idea. It's a very powerful one. It's a life-changing one as well. It gives you an insight, a perspective into yourself that is quite liberating. Because most people struggle when looking at themselves and seeing the dichotomies and the contradictions in our life. Sometimes we do feel that we're quite good people, quite refined, elevated people. We do quite a bit of good and we seem to be on a good path. And then sometimes we look at ourselves and we notice that if I'm such a good person, why did I just do that? Or why am I tempted to do this? Or why am I involved in something like that if I'm such a good person? We recognize within ourselves a certain ugliness that isn't befitting a person who is truly righteous. And it's quite disappointing. You thought you were doing well, and then look what happened. So, without Rabbi Shneur Zalman's structure of our two souls, we would have to call ourselves hypocrites, two-faced. That I'm all righteous, but then sometimes not. The two-soul thing tells you that, well, there's two distinct parts of your personality. There is a very righteous, good part of you, and there's a very selfish and sometimes ugly part of you. And they're both you. And it's your job to try and outweigh the good over the bad, struggle between the two. But it's not going to be surprising that sometimes one dominates and sometimes the other, because you've got two souls struggling for your attention at every moment. And so it's not that you're hypocritical, it's that you're two-souled. Not two-faced, but two-souled. And that is our reality. This doesn't excuse us. This doesn't excuse wrongdoing, or doesn't excuse our selfishness, but it explains it. And so therefore, rather than being surprised by it, we should expect that animal soul and its voice to come at us, and we should be ready for it. So this Rabbi Shneur Zalman introduces at the very beginning of Tanya the idea that you've got two souls wrestling for your attention. An interesting question that's asked by many who study Tanya is, if only one of these souls can be in control at any one time, who decides which one is controlled at any one time? When you have a competition between two, there has to be some third entity that decides which way you go. Who determines whether I'm in my animal mode or in my divine mode at any one time? Because think about it like this. If I'm in a divine mode right now, if the divine soul is my center of consciousness at this moment, if I'm in a divine state where I'm listening to my divine soul, I'm doing good, I'm selfless, I'm giving, I'm purposeful, I'm refined and elevated, if that's the state I'm in right now, how is the animal soul going to get in now? If the divine soul has control over me at this moment, how could the animal soul possibly get in? The divine soul is calling the shots. So how is there a switch? Or the other way around as well. If I'm in an animalistic mode at the moment, if the animal soul has total control over me, over my being, if I'm possessed by my animal soul at the moment, how can the divine soul get its voice across and come into my consciousness? Because the animal soul surely wouldn't let it in. So at any one moment, who's deciding which one of me I am? Because there's only me. There's my divine me, there's my animal me. So who decides which me I am right now? The divine soul would never choose to let the animal in. The animal will never choose to let the divine in. So then how am I switching from one to the other? Does that question make sense? The answer to it is found in other writings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman, not in Tanya, but in his book called Likutei Torah, another one of his works where he introduces a third soul. If you thought it was a lot to juggle two souls, we actually have three. We have a third soul called the intellectual soul. The Nefesh HaSichlis, he calls it. The intellectual soul. The intellectual soul means our capability to appreciate an argument, our logical mind, our rational self. We have a third column in our personality, which is the part of us that can be swayed by arguments this way or that. It's the judge within us that can judge which way I'm going to go. This third soul stands in between our animal and our divine souls. That the intellectual soul can hear the arguments of both and will judge one way or the other. Sometimes we are swayed by the arguments of the animal soul to be selfish, and sometimes we are swayed by the divine soul's presentation that we should be selfless. Our mind is our self that can hear the two sides and will sometimes go this way, sometimes go that way. A more refined intellectual soul will mean allowing the divine soul to win the argument much more. A less defined and less refined and elevated intellectual soul will be swayed much more easily by the animal soul. But it's our mind, our conscious mind, that decides which way we go. Here's the arguments of both. And so therefore, it's like we've got this in-between identity that listens to this side, listens to that side, and then decides which way to go. So when you're in judgment stage, that's not going to last too long. You're either going to be swayed by the animal soul and become animalistic, or you're going to be swayed by the divine soul and go towards the divine. And while you're in that state, the animal soul could put in a petition to your intellectual soul, an argument to pull you out of your divine state and bring you back down into the animalistic. So you might be living a very spiritual life and your animal soul says, you're not looking after yourself enough. You need to take a break. You're going too extreme in your spiritual side. The intellectual soul might be convinced by that and you switch back to being animalistic and selfish. The animal soul didn't really care about you not being too spiritual. It just didn't want you to be spiritual. Wasn't caring for your spiritual well-being. It was caring just for your physical self. but came up with an argument to pull you out of it. So you justified being less spiritual. I'm being too giving. Maybe. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes some people are too giving. But is that the animal soul just trying to stop you being giving? Stop you being selfless? It might be, but it's logical. The intellectual soul could be convinced by that and make you more animalistic. So at any one time, we're in control we're under the sway, under the control of one of these souls, either our divine self or our animal self. And at all times, our intellectual self is in between judging which way we're going to go, which path we're going to take, which soul we're going to listen to. This makes life complex and confusing because we've got three souls that are working within us. We knew we're all complex beings, but to hear that we have three identities, three personas within ourselves that are each vying with each other is quite a big thing to swallow. But it explains the dichotomies and the confusions that we have and the different voices that we have. And we need to learn to identify them, to get used to them. We have to become familiar with them in order to know which voice is coming from which soul. It's interesting that in Tanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman says we have two souls and doesn't talk about the third soul. And many have grappled with the question why. In his other works, he talks about a third soul, but in his major work, Tanya, he doesn't talk about a third soul. He talks about two souls. So we'll understand why by trying to get to know these three souls a little bit better, by experiencing them through a meditation. So what we're going to do is take this idea and try and feel it. Try and feel it within ourselves, to experience it in a visual way. And that will allow us to differentiate the three souls much stronger, to define them better, and hopefully give us a tool to be able to hear which voice is talking at any one time. So make yourselves comfortable. If you not too comfortable, but comfortable. Again, there's no particular posture or position in a Hasidic meditation, just one that will allow you to focus. It could be on the edge of your seat, it could be standing up. Closing eyes is helpful just to avoid distraction and allow yourself to go into a different world. If you're able to visualize with your eyes open, that's okay as well. But we're going to try and really lose ourselves into in this picture. So try first to calm the mind. Breathing can help that. Just slow breathing can calm you and get you focused. Breathing in a slow breath, holding it for a couple of seconds, then breathing out and holding it out for a couple of seconds. And if as you're breathing or as we go through this visualization, whenever distracting thoughts do come, so just gently move back to the topic, to the vision, without fighting the thoughts or without engaging in them, just coming back to the topic, back to the visual. So if you can start to feel yourself as you're sitting where you are. If you could try to look at yourself from a bird's eye view. Imagine almost like you're having an out-of-body experience, looking down at yourself sitting there. At first, it's sometimes hard to keep that vision of yourself because we are inside ourselves, not outside ourselves. But if you can focus until you get a really clear picture of yourself sitting in your seat, looking from above, and you're just sitting there with your eyes closed as you are, but you're looking down at yourself. And the you looking down, you're not in a body, you're not up there and on the seat, just your view of it. You're looking at it as if you're just watching from above, but the you is sitting there in the seat. Just your point of reference, your vision is coming from above, looking down at yourself sitting there. And you're the only one in the room. There's just you. Once you have that really clear, you can see yourself sitting there all alone. So now imagine almost like you took the lens of a camera, or you went out of focus, and the vision that you have of yourself sitting there splits up, and it looks like there's actually three of you. There's the one of you in the middle, and suddenly there are two exact replicas of you on either side. So now there's just you in the room, but three of you. Looking exactly the same, just sitting there, in the exact same position. Now just allow those three images to merge back into one, as if you took that camera lens away, or you refocused and you got it back into one. The two on the side just became merged into the one in the middle, and there's just you again. And then go back to the three of you. And back to being one. And just keep very slowly going back from three to one, back to three, until you can totally control that vision in your mind, until it can be really clear and crisp, seeing yourself as one and seeing yourself as three. When you have that really clear, so then you can repopulate the room with others. Everyone else is here as well. It's not just you and the three of you, but there's others as well. The same thing. People that are one, that are three, sitting around the room. And you're still looking at all this from a bird's eye view. You're looking at it from above. at this room full of single 3 people. Now, we're slowly going to go down to land in the middle self. So leave yourself as 3. There's 3 of you. And from the bird's eye view, slowly descend to enter into the middle self. So you're no longer looking at it from above, but now you're within that middle person, the middle you. And you have right next to you, on either side, another you. One on the left, one on the right. And all 3 of you are doing the exact same thing, just sitting there. And there are others around us, all doing the same thing in their threesomes. But you are centered, your awareness, your consciousness is centered in the middle. You know that you have a you on either side, but your awareness is in the middle you. Now, without losing the center of your consciousness being in the middle you, you start to become a bit more aware of the you to your left. And you realize that the you to your left is actually not meditating. Doesn't have the eyes closed. The you to your left is looking around the room. The you to your left is distracted. You in the middle are still meditating, but you're noticing that the you on your left is looking around. The you to your left is hungry and looking around if there's something to eat. The you in the middle is not feeling that hunger, but you're aware that the you to your left is. The you to your left is also looking around at the other people and assessing, who do I like, who do I don't like here. Looks with a bit of suspicion, feels a little bit threatened. And there's a little bit of animosity towards some of those others around. Not because they've done anything, just because they're competition with me. If I'm hungry, they might get the food and I might miss out. They might get the attention that I want. So the left you is looking around with calculated suspicion, feeling disconnected from everyone around. The middle you is just observing this. Now the middle you turns its attention away from the left you and its distractions and starts to become more aware of the you on your right. And from that side, from the right side, you notice a completely different mood and energy. Your right side is full of light. Full of goodness, happiness. On your right side, the you on your right side is in the meditation with you. And is feeling an overflowing sense of holiness, of goodness. The you on your right side feels the presence of the others in the room and feels totally connected and one with them. Feels complete love for them, for everyone here. Only wants good for everyone. Feels connected even to someone they don't know. And so now the you in the middle is observing that in the you on the right, this goodness, this light. And you observe the contrast of the light that's coming from the right side as opposed to the heaviness that came from the left. There's a inclusiveness, a connectivity that's on the right side that's so different to the threatened, insecure, selfish stance on the left. And so now your middle self starts to become aware of both sides at the same time. From the left, you're being pulled to just come back down to earth, to worry about material things, to worry about yourself, your urges, hunger, thirst, tiredness. It's trying to pull you down into that. And at the very same time, the other side, the right side, is trying to lift you up. To do good, to be giving, to be caring, to be spiritually connected, to be holy. So if you allow yourself to be taken a little bit by that, taken by the right side that's lifting you upwards. You might feel already that you're not really sitting three in a row. Your right side is pulling upwards, floating higher than you. Your left side is pulling you downwards. But you let yourself go towards your right side. But before you fly away, there's a tug from the left that pulls you down. And as you get distracted by this tug from the left, bringing you down into the mundane, you feel the pull back to the right, that higher self wanting you to go higher. Now if you come back to your middle self, just slowly let the left and the right quieten down, back into the middle self that is aware of your left and right, but not hearing them right now. You still sense that there's a heaviness on your left, a selfish drive on your left, and there's a light on your right, a holiness and a selflessness on your right. But now, allow those two side yous to merge with the middle one, to slowly meld into one. So there's just you now, sitting there. But that you has these three selves within. So now that they've melded into one, there's just you sitting there. Try to identify an urge from your left self that is now within you. A physical urge, hunger or fatigue or self-consciousness. And then try to identify an urge in you from your right self, from your higher self, that light that we felt before on the right side. Now feel that inside you, a light that wants to give, that wants to connect. That feels one. And as you sit there, surrounded by other people, feel how your left self feels disconnected from others, feels fearful of others, suspicious, only looks at others as what I can get from them. What do I need them for? And so from that perspective, we're very disconnected from each other. Now feel that other light, that right self, and how it relates to the others as being all one. A part of the one truth, the one divine reality. And there's a baseless love, unconditional love, that I just want good for you, and I just think what I can do for you. And see how easy it is to switch from one perspective to the other. The perspective that I'm a physical being with my own needs, or that I'm a soulful being that is connected to the soul of all, to God. So now try to listen to the voices of those souls, your souls, the yous, the selves. See if you can hear what do they want you to do right now. And see if you can identify which soul is saying what. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Anyone hear any voices? Hungry? Tired? So if you felt it, these are the three souls. There's the you that is selfish, there's the you that is selfless, and there's the you that observes, that listens to the two and gets pulled one way or the other, that's in between. And if you listen, you're always hearing these voices. There are constant voices telling you what you should be doing. And sometimes you need to listen to each one. There's a voice telling you that you need to eat and drink. You need to listen to that one. But that voice is telling you that's all you need to do, to eat and drink and consume and be comfortable. There's a voice that's telling you that there's more to life, that you're bigger than that. And they're all you. All these voices are you. They're coming inside, the internal voices. And so even if somebody has a very strong instinct, a strong urge towards something, that doesn't mean that that's your higher divine self. That could be your animal self, which is also very strong, in some ways more strong and forceful. It's much easier in a way to identify an animalistic urge than to hear the voice of the divine soul that's beckoning you upwards. So an inner voice, we have a few of them. Perhaps the reason why Rabbi Shnei Zalman in Tanya only talks about having two souls is because he's talking to the one in the middle. The you is the one in the middle that is experiencing the other two. That's the only one we can really talk to. We can talk to rational intellect, to judge correctly, and to go one way or the other. The animal soul, you can't talk to the animal soul. The animal soul is just selfish instinct. The divine soul is our higher self. Doesn't need to be talked to. It's the middle being, the one that is judging at every second which way to go. That's the one to talk to. That's the me that the Tanya is addressing, and telling me that you have two souls. You've got two beings, but they're not next to you, they're in you, they're you. I made it right and left because it does say in Tanya that our heart has two sides. In the left side of the heart is the center of the animalistic part of ourself, and in the right side of our heart is the center of the divine. And so that left and right imagery can work. But if we can, the idea of the visualization is to differentiate, to personify the three souls, the me in between, and my divine and my animal on either side, but then to merge them, but that they're all me. If my animal soul was in one corner and my divine soul was in another corner, I wouldn't have a struggle. It's that they're all in me. And so my inner voice that's talking, I have to identify where it's coming from. Any time that I hear a voice inside me telling me to do less good, it's almost always going to be my animal soul. Sometimes it's true that I need to temper myself, I need to pace myself, but most of the time, a voice telling me to do less good, to withdraw from goodness, is my animal soul. And the voice that's asking me to be better is my divine soul. And so the ideal balance is where the divine soul is determining our direction, is saying what we need to do. The animal soul is fueling it. The animal soul is our bodily self. We need to feed ourselves, but that has to be an accessory to our divine soul, not the other way around. So yes, I do need to eat and sleep and look after myself because I have a purpose that I need to fulfill, which is my divine soul's purpose. So my animal soul has an important function, my survival. That's important because I'm important, not because I'm an ego, but because I have something to contribute, to bring to the world. And so the clearer we can become in that split in our identity, the more likely we are to be able to identify which instinctive voice, which inner voice should be listened to and which needs to be put in its place. Any questions? Yeah.
Well, I think that explains what we do at shul. Because when we're at shul, we are educating and developing and spending a lot of time in training our good self, our minds. And that explains.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, we're all spiritual activity, and a shul is the hub of that, is to strengthen the divine side of ourselves, to become more aware, more connected with it, more surrounded by it, to utilize it. Which means that the animal self will fight that. Will do everything it can to stop that. So there'll always be an excuse not to go to shul, or if you're there, to have your mind on something else. Because the animal soul will do whatever it can to stop that. But yeah, that's right. That is the strengthening of the divine soul. Encouraging it. It's also interesting that the Rabbi Shneur Zalman's son, the Mittler Rebbe, he was known as, he said that it's always good to gather together and to talk about these things. And a shul is a place of gathering and encouraging not just your own spirituality but others. And he said the reason why it's good to get together is because when even two people get together and talk about their spiritual state, so then you have two divine souls against one animal soul. Which is wrong, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't add up mathematically. If you and I get together and we talk about our spiritual state, so what do we got? Well, I got these two souls, divine and animal, so have you, so that's 2 against 2. Where does he get 2 divine souls against 1 animal soul? I mean, you could gang up on my animal soul. Together we'll gang up on my animal soul, but your animal soul is also there. They'll also join in, surely. It'll be 2 against 2. Where do you get 2 against 1?
Your animal soul doesn't tend to get involved in other people's business.
Definitely not to team up. The animal soul, by definition, is selfish. So the animal soul it's not even interested in your selfishness. It's not even interested in your indulgence. It's only interested in my indulgence. My animal soul is only interested in myself. So by definition, it can't team up. So when 2 people get together, the divine souls connect, are one, team up together, unite, add goodness. The animal soul's not interested in each other. So when you gather, when you share your spirituality with others, the divine souls accumulate together. There's a collective energy that the divine souls create The animal souls are all isolated. They're all lonely. They're all just on their own. They're there for themselves. So therefore, there is a power in collective spirituality where our divine souls are ganging up on each individual animal soul. And the animal souls don't have a way to connect. And so you can't do this on your own. When we do it together, it's much more powerful, much stronger. Yeah.
It sounds like it's important to nurture the divine soul so that it's weighted more in the side of the divine soul, so that the intellectual soul can choose that more easily.
Mm-hmm.
How important is it to actually train the intellectual soul to perhaps understand things like morality and be able to make better decisions based on what it's given?
That's a fantastic question. To train how important is it to train and develop the intellectual soul? It's vital. It's in fact the key to everything here is that the intellectual soul should be on side. The more clear our thinking is, the more obvious the divine soul's arguments will be, and the more ridiculous the animal souls will be. Because if our sense of right and wrong, of goodness, is clear in our mind, so then why would I go after selfishness of the animal soul? It's ridiculous. But if our mind is full of corrupted ideas and strange philosophies, so then the mind can be the most powerful tool of justification for selfishness and evil and negativity. So that's why the mind is the one in between, because the mind is not innately good or bad. The mind is about arguments, what makes sense. But the mind has the power to perceive a higher reality. It also has the power to be dragged into a lower way of thinking. So some of the most evil people in the world are very intelligent, and their brilliance just fuels their evil, and they can justify their evil with a complex philosophy that shows how what they're doing is right. And that's something we all do. We all justify the things we do as wrong. That's our intellectual soul being bound by the animal soul and being dragged by it. Whereas a strong intellect doesn't mean someone who's smart. A strong intellect here means somebody who's clear on right and wrong. That will tend much more towards the divine soul and be much more a moral being. And this is why study is so important. And this is why in the Jewish tradition, study is seen as so important. Not because intellectualizing is important, but because getting the mind to have moral clarity is the key to allowing the divine soul to assert itself.
Isn't it also ultimately to make sure that you're doing the right thing so that you'll have that clarity of your godly soul? I mean, if you're not doing all the mitzvahs, there's no way you're going to be able to tell right from wrong, even if you study all day. If you've got that impurity, you're eating non-kosher food, doing impure things, hanging around impure places, then you just, no matter what kind of study you do, you're going to be swayed off the path.
Right, well, the intellectual soul is a part of our body as well. Our mind is a part of our body. So what we do will impact our intellectual soul and our view of reality. So somebody who does things that are wrong, immoral, impure, so that contaminates our clarity of mind, which therefore clouds the arguments of the divine soul. So definitely the way a person lives is going to affect the mind. That's why the mind can be the intermediary between the animal side of ourselves and the divine side. Because on the one hand, the mind is conceptual, is abstract, but on the other hand, the mind is a part of the body. So it relates to both sides and is affected by what we do with our life, absolutely.
I feel a bit confused about this concept because I feel that our mind is actually something that is just our perception. It's just what we're learning from our parents. And our high self, this is the center. This is something that if is. And it's, for me, it's a little bit strange that our mind decides which one to take, because our mind is actually our ego. This is the picture as we perceive the reality, but it's not true.
Okay, so it's true that mind can be part of ego, but mind has the ability not to be. The proof of this is that our mind is the only part of ourself, really, that can listen to what somebody else says and appreciate it, understand it. In other words, you and I could disagree on a topic. You feel very strongly one way, I feel very strongly another way. But I can listen to what you have to say, and my mind can actually perceive and understand your opinion. My heart can't feel your feeling, it feels my feeling, but my mind can feel what you feel. The mind is the one part of ourself that can experience what's outside of ourself. So therefore it is the part of self, it's part of me, it's part of ego, but it's able to see beyond ego. So it can be the intermediary between my egotistical, animalistic self and my divine higher self. Because it's a bit of both. It's open to both. It's connected to both. Okay, we're going to stop there. And God willing, next week, another one.